Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. I'm posting this because the only solution I see is legal action. But I want to avoid that because it's expensive and will probably take forever. And even after all that's happened, these people are still my family. I'm open to absolutely any other solutions, though. For context, I work in the petroleum industry and sometimes need to travel abroad for work. I'm usually gone for a couple of weeks at one stretch, and the most I've spent without coming back home was just a month. So long stretches out of home are the exception and not the norm. This is important to establish before I get into the actual story. I married my wife 4 years ago. We met at a concert, and after dating for 2 years, we got married. It's like we grew up together. I was 24 when I met her and still lived in my hometown, commuting for work. After getting married, we lived in the family house for a few months before moving out and getting our own place. I had the same job back then, and although it was difficult at times because I often had to miss events and stuff, we made it work for us. I thought I was the luckiest man on earth to find someone who was okay with my work life. What I didn't know 4 years ago, though, was how she would try to find comfort in my absence in the worst possible way. There's a little more I should explain for the rest of the story to make sense. My wife and I have been trying to have kids practically ever since we got married. We've tried out every doctor and every possible treatment at this point, but unfortunately, nothing has worked. The doctors have told us to basically pray for a miracle at this point, and we're tired of running from one fertility specialist to the other. I was starting to give up the hope of ever having kids, but then our long-awaited miracle finally happened. We were over the moon. I was probably the happiest I've ever been. Around 6 months into the pregnancy, I got told that I need to be abroad for 3 months. I flat out refused because I wanted to take care of my wife and be with her. But she convinced me to go, saying that we could really use the money because everyone knows how expensive babies are. She also told me that it's just the last few months of the pregnancy and she'd be fine. I was very, very reluctant, but couldn't ignore what she had said about the money. Brainstorming for a solution, I suggested that my wife could temporarily move to my hometown where my brother could take care of her. My brother lives in my childhood home because he has been taking care of our farm since our parents passed away. I thought my wife would enjoy the country air, and if she needed anything, my brother would be right there. I pitched the idea to her, and after some initial hesitation, she said yes. She has always liked the farm, and my brother and her get along great whenever they meet. I drove her there before my flight and went away thinking I made the right call. Boy, was I wrong. I worked the hardest I possibly can, desperate to finish everything as fast as possible and go back. The first month was fine. I missed my wife and called her every day, and she told me that she missed me too. But after a while, I started to feel like she was trying to avoid me. She didn't pick up my calls as often and texted back after hours. There was obviously a time difference between us because we were in different continents, but we had a lot of experience with this, and she had always been good at communication. I started getting worried, and after a lot of anxiety and overthinking, asked her if everything was fine. She told me that it's nothing and she was just sleeping a lot more because the pregnancy was making her tired. The way she said this wasn't very convincing, and I asked her again if everything was fine, and she kept assuring me it's fine. I thought she must have been getting sick of the countryside, with my brother as pretty much her only company. I reached out to my brother to ask if everything was fine, and he repeated the same things as my wife. I was so stupid back then that I decided to trust my brother to take care of everything. He did take care of it after all, but way more than he needed. Ha ha. I had already been outside the country for 2 months at that point when I got a call that she's in labor. This was unexpected at 8 months, and I was worried sick. But my brother told me that the baby was fine, just a little premature. I spoke to our doctor, and he assured me that both mom and baby were perfectly healthy. I wanted to be there so much it was physically painful, but there was no way I could leave before at least 1 more month. I convinced myself to tough it out for a few more weeks, thinking that everything will be back to normal once I'm back, and that the money will be really helpful with a newborn. A month later, it was time for me to go back. I decided to surprise my wife and my brother by telling them I needed to stay another month and then showing up unexpectedly. I was so excited, it makes me laugh now. Nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. My flight landed and I decided to go straight to the farm without even keeping my luggage at home. I was super jet lagged but didn't care at all. My son was waiting for me. But when I showed up at the farm, there was no one there. I asked the neighbors and they told me my brother and wife had moved to the city after the baby was born. This was new information for me. I had obviously talked to both of them since the baby was born, but neither of them had told me about that. Confused, but still hopeful, I decided to go back to our apartment. But guess what? They weren't at the apartment either. This was when I started panicking. Where did my whole family disappear? I called up my wife, fully panicking, and asked where she was. She said she was at home. Another moment of panic. I told her I had been to the farm and our apartment and they were nowhere to be found. That's when I found out that my whole life has been uprooted. My wife handed the phone to my brother and I heard her tell him that I'm back. He came to the phone and told me that he has gotten a place in the city and moved in with my wife. Before I had time to ask any questions, he told me that he and my wife were in love and wanted to be together. I was literally dumbstruck. My own brother and my wife? The two people closest to me in the entire world? After a few moments of devastating silence, I managed to ask him what the hell he meant. I demanded to speak to my wife and see my son. That's when he hit me with another devastating piece of news. He told me that my son was biologically his. They had been sleeping together for months, and everyone knew about my infertility issues. I felt my entire world collapse around me. Fast forward to now. I've been back for 3 months and still haven't seen my wife or son. I've seen my brother and we got into a huge fight. He told me it was his baby and I'm not allowed to see him. After days of begging and pleading, they agreed for a DNA test. The results proved that I was indeed the father, so my wife was sleeping with both of us. That removed any last remnants of love I had for her. The only thing I want now is to see my son, but she refuses to let me get anywhere near them. My brother says he doesn't care that the kid is biologically mine, and they want to raise him together. The only reason I'm writing this today is because my wife's lawyer just served me our divorce papers today, and I just needed to let everything out. I have received hundreds of kind messages and comments. This was so unexpected, and you don't know how much I appreciate the support. Everyone is telling me the same thing, to let the divorce go to trial and file for custody. I live in a no-fault divorce state, and I've spoken to a lawyer who said courts only see what's best for the kid. This means that as long as my son is safe and they have the means to take care of him, my wife will probably get custody. My best shot is at getting joint custody. But as a newborn, my son needs to be with his mother, so things will probably get messy and complicated. Also, the fact that I have to travel a lot for my job doesn't help the case either. So the odds are hardly in my favor. I have decided to take the case to trial. It's going to be complicated, but I found a good lawyer, and if there is even a chance that I can be with my son, I'm ready to take it. Thank you again for all the great advice that you have given me. I don't know how long the trial will take, but I'll try to put in an update after we have a result. It's been 14 months since my last post, and today has been our final hearing. My lawyer was right in the first place. My wife did get custody, but I have visitation rights. I'm seeing my baby boy for the first time next weekend. To say I'm disappointed would be an understatement, but I'm just glad that I can finally see him. I can't believe that he's over a year old, and I have only seen pictures and videos of him. Thanks for tagging along with me on this rocky journey, guys. Wow, OP. I'm so sorry about everything you have gone through. I feel so angry myself about what has happened to you, so I can't even imagine what you have gone through. You seem to be taking it like a champ, though. I love how positive you have sounded through everything. Cheers to you, and I'm so excited that you'll finally get to see your son. You'll be an awesome dad for sure. Your ex-wife and brother suck so damn much. I can't believe how selfish some people can get for absolutely no reason. I'm just glad you have visitation rights. It's going to be hard, but I'm sure you'll have a wonderful relationship with your son. Using a throwaway and making up names for privacy. I'm 29, female. And my fiancé, we'll call him Dan, 31, male, and I have been together for 3 years and just got engaged. He has one sibling who identifies as non-binary. We'll call them Quinn, 23. Quinn's parents are all right with it, but don't really understand. Dan dotes on them, and they are super, super close. I like Quinn a lot, and we usually get along pretty well. They're a bit quirky and nerdy, which isn't typically what my friends are like, but they're happy and pretty nice. This, I think, is important for context. Though Quinn identifies as non-binary, they're usually gendered as a woman everywhere we go. Since they still have long hair, wear makeup, and are on the bigger side with a pretty big chest, and are 5 foot nothing tall. They usually wear men's clothing, but occasionally will wear a dress or a skirt. Today, I was discussing wedding plans with Dan, and he mentioned that Quinn was going to be a groomsperson and stand on his side and wear a suit. I was a little shocked by this. I figured that Quinn would wear a dress, since they do wear dresses sometimes, and be on my side. Quinn doesn't use a binder, and I'm afraid they would stick out and would confuse my older family members, who I haven't even really had a talk with about Quinn yet. When I expressed this to my fiancé, he was mad. He said it was inconsiderate of me, and that it showed that I think of Quinn as a woman. I really don't, and I don't mind Quinn being a part of that side of the wedding party for all the before-wedding stuff. Besides, like stuff pertaining to the clothes and whatnot. Like, I don't mind Quinn going to the bachelor party and not the bachelorette. I just think it will look weird and cause unnecessary stress and confusion on the day. I even said Quinn could wear a black dress or flowy pants made to look like a dress to go better with their style. But my fiancé isn't having it. He said he won't even ask Quinn about it, because it will upset them. Would I be the a-hole if I asked Quinn if they'd mind? YTA, if Quinn is in the wedding party regardless, who cares what side they're on? If their gender presentation could go either way, ask what they want to wear rather than just assume. YTA for the first. Easy thing. Quinn is Dan's sibling, not yours. I don't see why there would be any implicit expectation that Quinn would be on your side when they are Dan's sibling and super close, you say. Along with that, I hope you know it is extremely normal in 2022 for people to have grooms people and brides people of all genders, and to not have simply men for a groom and women for a bride. If people are confused, explaining that Quinn, their Dan's sibling and non-binary, is quite easy. You can also end the conversation quickly after that. It's your wedding after all. And B, Quinn is, as I mentioned before, Dan's sibling. So there's nothing abnormal about them being there in support of Dan. So yes, you're not being supportive of Quinn. You even say they don't regularly wear skirts. Let Dan and Quinn make the decisions on this. YTA. You have a very narrow mindset and it shows in your language. They're a bit quirky and nerdy. This is important for context. It really wasn't. It was kind of just a lame attempt at masking your own transphobia. They're not quirky for wanting to stand on their brother's side. A lot of cisgender women attend as groomsmen for their brothers. It's not some unheard of thing. And a lot of women wear suits to weddings too. Even though the point here is the Quinn isn't even a woman. You just see them as one, and it would make you comfortable for them to express themselves fully in front of your family and friends. The second to last paragraph really did it for me. He said it was inconsiderate of me, and that it showed that I think of Quinn as a woman, which he's right, you do. I just think it will look weird and cause unnecessary stress and confusion on the day. Who are you referring to as the it in this sentence? It will look weird? You mean your sibling-in-law simply being themselves is going to be weird for you? I don't think it will cause unnecessary stress and confusion. I think you're just projecting your own feelings and you're too afraid to stand beside them because that'll expose you for what you really are, a narrow-minded a-hole. You are absolutely the a-hole. You literally want a non-binary person to conform to cis-normative standards just for the sake of your own comfort. I get it's your big day or whatever, but it is for your fiancé as well, who clearly knows his sibling and what they would prefer to wear more than you do. 10 years ago, my sister borrowed $6,000 to attend law school and never paid me back. After graduating, she practiced briefly but had financial issues. Her morbidly obese husband never got a job because he deals with crippling anxiety and is afraid to work. During the 2019 holidays, my sister's husband spent the rent money on a luxury item, and my sister had to borrow $2,000 from me for rent. That same Christmas holiday, my mother also borrowed $2,000 from me for months of back rent. My parents got divorced more than a decade ago for money-related problems. During that divorce, my mother admitted that she had a gambling problem in my youth. During my childhood, she once told me that she overspent on Christmas presents and needed to borrow money, but made me promise not to tell Dad. Over the last 10 years, since my parents' divorce, I have loaned family members close to $15,000, not repaid, to cover living expenses. Aside from my sister practicing law for a year, few of my family members have attempted to work much. My mother says she is, 1, too old to get a job, and 2, will lose her state health insurance if she finds work. To make ends meet, my mother, sister's husband, and my 3 siblings routinely enroll in online degree programs to get student loans. After years of seeing this, I'm starting to conclude that they treat it as income. My mother's perspective sounds more innocent, though. After all, I went to college and got a good career. Why shouldn't they? 2 years ago, my sister almost died but received a heart transplant. She couldn't afford the bar fees and lost her law license. After recovery, she decided that she didn't want to return to family law and instead enrolled in a postgraduate tax law program. She graduated nearly the top of her class, but didn't work during that period. She found a local rental assistance nonprofit that kept a roof over her family's head, but they've recently closed down. 2 months ago, my sister borrowed $1,000 from me to get her law license reinstated. But last week, she informed me she was 3 months behind on rent and facing eviction. The pattern is now worryingly clear to me. Most of my family members play financial chicken. I'm worried about continuing to sacrifice my future by enabling their behavior. I've literally lost count of how many times I've heard the story that X student loan is delayed and family member Y can't afford rent. As a compromise, I offered my sister to pay for the back rent in exchange for job applications, proving that she and her husband have looked. She told me that she was waiting to get her law license reinstated from the bar before starting. It doesn't appear that any attempt has been made to secure employment by her or her husband during the last 3 months. AITA? NTA, you are willing to help, but you want them to show they are helping themselves. You are being more generous than most would be by this point. Your assessment of your family's financial balance seems to be accurate based on your account, and continuing to support their irresponsibility won't help in the long run. It's okay to stop being the family source of funds to people who aren't making efforts to progress. NTA, you are a person, not a bank. You have done more than your share to take care of people who refuse to care for themselves. It's inexcusable that your sister is capable of working and choosing not to. Her shameful choice is what's making her family homeless, not yours. Your sister should work as a highly qualified legal assistant until her license is reinstated.